Trent Alexander-Arnold was officially presented as the latest addition to the Real Madrid squad. The journalists were out in full force to welcome the former Liverpool player, but then there was a bit of a surprise at the press conference.
Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias tanto al presidente Florentino Pérez como al Club Real Madrid por esta oportunidad. Fichar por un club como Real Madrid no sucede todos los días. Es un sueño hecho realidad. Estoy muy feliz y orgulloso de estar aquí. Tengo muchas ganas de enseñarle mi juego a los madridistas. Pero soy consciente de que jugar por Real Madrid es una gran responsabilidad, pero estoy listo para darlo todo por el equipo y los madridistas. Tengo muchas ganas de enseñarle mi juego y ganar muchos títulos y ser campeón y crecer y disfrutar con los mejores del mundo. Gracias y a la Madrid.
Well done.
Wow.
Spanish is better than yours, Dan.
5 years, I would say.
He's been there 2 minutes.
Sid Lowe joins us. Sid, what a power play from Trent.
I'll tell you what, there could not be a better TV presenter to go through this than you, Dan Thomas, because you know exactly what this means. It was genuinely. I mean, you know how there's a section of the media that loves to use the word stunned. You know, so and so stunned fans last night. This was actually genuinely a moment where people were kind of a little bit stunned, because when he said that first bit, "Buenas tardes a todos," good afternoon everybody. At that point you think, okay, that's quite normal. And then the next line was in Spanish, and there was a kind of a moment. And by the way, I should point out, this is two different rooms. There's the basketball court where they do the presentation bit, and then the press room. In the press room, the journalists are watching this on a screen. In the basketball court, obviously, it's the dignitaries, the directors, and so on. And he starts doing the second line in Spanish. You think, hang on a minute. And then the third, and then the fourth. He's going to do the whole thing in Spanish. And it was really well delivered. And as you say, I mean, I think one way of looking at it is to talk about it as a power play. And he said himself, when he came into the press conference room, having done the presentation, which, by the way, he then did in English. You know, this was just this short speech of a 1 minute and 1 second. But he said, yeah, it felt like the right thing to do. It felt like it surprised a few people, and I think it did. And I think it did make an impact. And of course, the context of this is that, generally speaking, British players come to Spain and don't speak particularly good Spanish. Obviously, the other context of this is the last really big name British player pre-Bellingham was Gareth Bale, and one of the things that people attacked him for was not speaking Spanish. And so to do this the first time, I think really did have an impact. Now, I don't want to overplay this, because fundamentally this is someone preparing a speech and delivering it very well and doing it without cue cards, and that's pretty impressive. But obviously what matters is now how he plays. But I do think it made an impact, and I do think it surprised people.
And we're just going to try and start at your mic, because we're just seeing the first pictures of Trent in a Real Madrid shirt. Don, overall, is this going to work, do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was well impressed with that, by the way, because the hardest thing for a footballer when you go into a dressing room, I've never had it, but if you've got to try and listen and learn and try and listen to what's going on and what's being said, and you haven't got a clue what's going on, that's where I think the English boys would struggle. He's just absolutely nailed that press conference there. It was perfect. Took him 2 minutes. It took you 4 years.
And,
he's still up to that
and he only
standard.
knew he was going to Real Madrid a couple of weeks ago. So he's done very well.
Well, the Liverpool fans are going, how long have you been learning that, lad? He nailed it.
Yeah.
Fair play to him.
Yeah, very much so. Sid, you look at the position that he's going to take up when we and obviously you kind of think, is it a one-on-one battle with Dani Carvajal? Is it that simple? Obviously, we fixed Sid's mic and then broke his headphones in the process.
Tell you the hardest thing, Dan.
Oh, I'm sorry, Daniel. Yeah, no, I missed the bit where you directed it at me.
All right. Sid, you can answer.
We've started really well tonight, haven't we?
Well, standard. standard show, to be fair. Sid, Dani Carvajal, is it basically between him and Trent? Is it that simple?
Well, I think the logical first answer to that is yes, but I actually think you can expand it beyond that and talk about alternatives. And it was interesting actually that today in the press conference, one of the questions asked by one of the Spanish journalists was very direct, and it actually didn't directly say, is it you or him? But it said, what do you think of Danny Carvajal? And I don't know if there was kind of some optimism that Trent would say, oh, he's rubbish, I've got his place, it's fine. But Trent said, great player, respect him a lot. I think, look, if Real Madrid play four at the back, of course the natural place for Trent Alexander-Arnold is to be the right back. But I think Xabi Alonso may not do so. So that may open up the possibility of them both playing. Because if it is a straight choice, and if Carvajal is back at his best, and you want a right back who's a defensive right back and has some of those other qualities, to be honest, Carvajal is probably ahead of Trent Alexander-Arnold. But I think it's about finding a fit, if at all possible, for both of them. I personally, and I don't know what the rest of you think, but I personally am not entirely won over by the idea of Trent as being an actual midfielder. I think was being a defender, maybe released from some of those defensive duties, yes. But I'm a little bit dubious about the idea of him being an actual midfielder. But I think Madrid will try it. I don't know if they'll stick with it.
The narrative around Trent from most cities, obviously, great attacker, can deliver a fantastic ball, suspect defensively. Is that a narrative that's carried itself to Spain?
No, not really. And it was interesting, actually, today that I mean, look, I say not really. Of course, this is something people are aware of. And, of course, when people have analysed his game, when they've talked about what he may bring to Real Madrid, part of the analysis has been that we know there are some defensive weaknesses. But he was asked today, and I thought it was an interesting question, whether he felt that Spain was the kind of place, how do I put this, culturally, in footballing culture terms, that actually won't attack him so much for being defensively flawed, that actually will appreciate those offensive qualities more, that maybe Real Madrid are the kind of club that, bear in mind, that have had Roberto Carlos, that have had Marcelo at left back, two guys who are fundamentally attacking players, and that perhaps there would be an embracing of his approach. And what he said actually was not really to engage with that question, but so much as to say, look, and I think it was an important point actually, what he said. He said, look, I have played the way my managers have asked me to play. And if people don't appreciate it, well then, it is what it is. I'll just keep on playing, and so long as my teammates and my manager appreciate it, I don't really care.
I think fans of La Liga, of Real Madrid in particular, this is great, isn't it, chat?
Without question.
Someone with spark, someone adds a little bit of flair, which is what you want.
Without question. And to that comparison with Danny Carvajal, of course, it's inevitable. Carvajal trying to come back from a serious injury, so we see how that takes shape. And then it may just very well be a case of horses for courses. No question in my mind, Carvajal is better defensively, but Trent Alexander-Arnold has a better passing range. So how that plays out over the course of a long domestic and European season for Real Madrid, inevitably time will tell. But it gives Xabi Alonso different options as to who he employs on that right-hand side, or whether it's one or the other, or both at the same time. And it does give Real Madrid that extra attacking threat on the right-hand side, which maybe they need, maybe they rely on. Maybe they have the midfielders to cope with, as Sid is pointing out, as Real Madrid have done over the course of many a season. The other thing to this is, and as for all the criticism that we've levied around Trent Alexander-Arnold, he's been the right back in two Liverpool teams that have delivered 2 titles in the last 30 years. So for all his issues, somehow Liverpool were able to cope with them and be the defining Liverpool team of certainly the last 30 years. Can't be that bad, can it?
Sid, it's interesting, obviously, Real Madrid getting these deals done before the Club World Cup. Lots of speculation about who could be making way for these new members within the squad. Obviously, different position, but a lot of talk about the future of Rodrygo. Marca reporting that the Brazilian is going to stay.
Yeah, I mean, I must say I'm a little bit sceptical about these kind of reports this early. I think if you look at the way that these... Look, this isn't about attacking Marca for this story. It's about the kind of, if you like, the enthusiasm or the determination to see something right from the very start. So from that very first training session which Xabi Alonso takes as coach, there's a little bit of footage, and bear in mind that we're not at the training sessions. The footage we see is the footage that Real Madrid TV put out, and there's a little bit of footage of Xabi Alonso explaining something to Rodrygo, and Rodrygo watching Alonso move and watching him go, and a lot has been made of, I think, very little. And this idea, oh look, he's seen that in Alonso there's a way of doing this. Now bear in mind that this is a training session in which the immense majority of Real Madrid's starting players aren't there because they're on international duty. Rodrygo's one of the few. So you kind of already in this situation in which, well, there's the focal point. There's a player listening to Alonso. There's a player getting a solution for Alonso. I just think it's incredibly premature to be making those kind of conclusions now, given that Alonso hasn't yet definitively decided even what the structure of the team is, let alone who the players within that structure are.
Meanwhile, talk to us about Franco Mastratuano, Sid.
Can I give you the honest answer here?
Yeah.
And that is that I can't talk to you about him. I really don't know very much about him. I know there's a huge amount of excitement here because there's a belief that this is kind of the emerging player of a new generation, a footballer who could potentially be absolutely fantastic. Of course, it fits with that idea that Real Madrid have been going for over the last 6 or 7 years, actually maybe even a little bit longer than that. Bear in mind how young they signed Vinicius, how young they signed Rodrygo, that idea of going to South America, finding the player that's, in theory at least, set up to be the next great player of his generation. You could say that this was maybe the idea with Endrick as well, where you pay very, very high fees for very young players, but that you think in the long run will be proven to be not particularly high fees, because you are getting the very best talent of the next generation. That is how they think he fits into this. I'll be honest with you, I'm not in a position to judge that.
It's been quite the soap opera, hasn't it, developing in the US men's national team. Obviously, Pulisic said he wouldn't be playing this summer. We had the likes of Tim Howard and Landon Donovan coming out and criticising him. He hit back today for the first time since those critics were revealed publicly, saying, towards the end of the season, my body just started talking to me and I started to think, what is going to be best for me next year? And going into the World Cup, and was that to play 8 more games and get no rest at all and go straight into pre-season? I did want to play in the 2 friendlies, but they said, no, only 1 roster. You can talk about my performances, whatever you want, but to question my commitment, especially towards the national team, in my opinion, that's way out of line. Shaq?
A couple of things. I find it a little ridiculous that Christian Pulisic has to answer these criticisms. Kind of given a lot of discussion we've had around a lot of European-based players, albeit not CONCACAF players, in terms of the workload of the European season, everything that it entails, how many games they're being asked to play. And now Christian Pulisic decides it's his decision entirely to take a rest, and he's being criticised for that. And given where that criticism is coming from in Donovan and Tim Howard, he feels the need to address that. And I guess that kind of leans into how important both those two are in terms of US soccer. I also find it ridiculous that he has to be talking about conversations that he's had with the coaching staff, private conversations that he's had to have with the coaching staff about his availability, about whether he wanted to play or not, in an effort to defend that. Those are things that should stay in-house. This is no fault of Christian Pulisic's. In defending his decision, he now has to make public these conversations that both Tim Howard and Landon Donovan would know about, that would have had when they are players. So I find it really, really poor. The criticism was really poor, but it's born out of how poor the US have looked of late. And a year out from the World Cup, just a day short of exactly a year out from the World Cup, we're having conversations about the US men's national team, their performances, what's to come, will it be an embarrassment? And obviously not having your star players, and Christian Pulisic is number 1 on that list, available, is making this team look right now worse than it is and maybe causing alarm. I'm not sure is fully necessary.
Seems a little bit ignorant, doesn't it, from Landon Donovan, the former player, to criticise a player that's played 100 games in 2 seasons. Like, these guys should know how difficult it is. And it's one of these, I think, where it goes full conversation, it goes full circle, everything's a bit of a contradiction, because their question is commitment because he's pulled out of the Gold Cup squad, right? So that's what they're sort of leaning on. But then, as we discussed the other day, Landon Donovan more or less done the same thing. Yep. You've got to respect the player's decision. If he feels as though his body can't cope with an extra few games after a really busy season in Serie A, going into a campaign next year and a World Cup, he's got every right to have that conversation with the manager and the coach, hasn't he?
We've sat here and had conversations about whether it's Rodri and there's just this succession of players who've broken down for one reason or another. Yeah. And we've spoken about the workload. Now Christian Pulisic is saying that he feels the best thing for him maybe it's to pull out of
and
this
his intuition saying, if I carry on, I might get injured.
Exactly, and that's the thing. The player knows. The player knows. I'll go back to when I broke my leg in 2000. A really simple challenge. It wasn't a foul, I'll say that, from Dean Saunders. He just caught me a little awkwardly, and I fell awkwardly, broke my leg, I'm out for 6 months. But leading up to that, I was feeling exhausted. I was going back to Trinidad and Tobago for internationals. And keep in mind, the domestic workload for West Ham at that time was nowhere near what Christian Pulisic would have been having to endure with AC Milan. But I just knew, but you just feel, oh, I can get through this weekend. And then all of a sudden, I'm out for 6 months. Now, you're
better off doing this
exactly,
than having a fantastic World Cup, aren't you?
Right.
You're better off doing it that way.
If Christian Pulisic pulls on his cleats for the Gold Cup and goes down injured and is out for 6 or 9 months, then everybody, including Tim Howard and Landon Donovan, would be saying, if he knew that's how he was feeling, he should have pulled out. And I find it ridiculous that you do not give the player the benefit of the doubt when you were a player yourself.
Yeah.
And you understand those demands yourself.
Not long now until the Club World Cup kicks off. Manchester City, one of the favourites going into the start of this brand new tournament. They are favourites to advance out of Group G ahead of Juventus. They play out in their opener as Rob Dawson joins us. Oh, they play Wydad, in their openers. Rob Dawson joins us. Rob, you will be following Manchester City throughout this tournament. How seriously are they taking it?
Well, the message from City is they're taking it very seriously. You know, there was talk maybe about a year ago, would City treat this as a glorified pre-season tour? Would they take their star names? Well, they have. You know, they've pushed through 4 signings before the tournament in that little window that FIFA created. They've brought the strongest possible squad that they could, and even players like Phil Foden, who Pep Guardiola is saying that probably needs a rest. He's out here and he's going to play in the game. So in terms of right now, obviously you can't judge until they start playing the games, but in terms of preparation and how seriously they're taking it ahead of the tournament, they couldn't be taking it any more seriously, really.
For Manchester United, a huge summer for them coming up, Rob. What is their priority at the moment, and where do we stand on the comings and goings?
Cunha very early. I think a lot of fans are very happy to see them start their transfer business early, given the season that they've just had. The next priority is Bryan Mbeumo from Brentford. The negotiations are carrying on with that. They want to get that over the line as quickly as possible. And then attention will turn to signing a centre forward. I mean, you can tell with the signings that they're looking to make that Ruben Amorim has identified a lack of goals as a major problem, and they want to fix it. I mean, to be honest, you could go through that entire squad and probably fix every single position. But in terms of what Ruben Amorim wants, he wants to get goals through the door as quickly as possible. And it started early with Cunha and those negotiations with Bryan Mbeumo.
Is there any chance Mbeumo will turn his back on United and go to Spurs and follow his old manager there, Rob?
I mean, I'm sure there is that possibility, man. People will put 2 and 2 together now because Thomas Frank, his manager at Brentford, has joined Tottenham. Obviously, Mbeumo is one of Brentford's best players. He's had a fantastic season where he's reached 20 Premier League goals. I mean, speaking to Man United today, they're still very, very relaxed about Mbeumo. They don't feel that they're going to get usurped by Tottenham. They don't feel that they're in any real danger of having that happen. They've had assurances from Mbeumo and his representatives that it is Man United that he wants. He wants to move to Old Trafford, and they're willing to trust him. So as long as they can get a fee agreed quickly and get those negotiations over the line, they fully expect Mbeumo to be a Man United player.
What would you do, Don? How much of an influence does it?
I've done it.
Having an old manager.
I've done it. I've followed Howard Kendall from Sheffield United to Everton. It's a massive pull. And I loved Howard anyway, so I was always going to go and join him, and I was upgrading in terms of the clubs that I was going to and from. The decision he's got to make now is, does he think it's possible that Man United are in a genuine rebuild, or is it going to be 4, 5, 6 years? It feels as though the signings that they're trying to make, it feels quite impressive to me.
What, Cunha?
Well, yeah, good signing. What they need is legs. I mean, they need a centre forward.
It's not a game changer, is it?
He is a game changer, yeah.
I don't think so, Don.
Well, I do.
I don't think... he's now going to put Manchester United as title contenders?
No, he won't.
I don't understand what you mean he's a game changer.
Well, he is a game-changing player.
In what context for Manchester United, their ambition?
Because he adds legs, he adds goals, he adds assists, on top of maybe Victor Osimhen, on top of maybe Bryan Mbeumo. So the rebuild looks like it's happening. It's quite impressive to me, even though it's only one player through the door in Cunha, who's a fantastic player. I think from Bryan Mbeumo's point of view, as I was saying, You can either go to Tottenham and play for your former manager in Thomas Frank, which
And
would
play
be quite
Champions League.
Play Champions League, which would be quite impressive to go and have a manager that completely trusts you. Or you look at the club of the size of Man United and think, well, I could be part of something. Knowing that Cunha's signed, Brian Mbeumo next. If they give him insurances that maybe we're going after a number 9 in Osimhen, all of a sudden I look at it and think, because listen, as Rob said there, 2 players are not going to take Man United to win in the league. We know that, but a rebuild has to start somewhere. And there's no reason with no European football whatsoever next season, Man U can't have a really good go at getting European football or top 4 again next season. Because they've got 1 game a week.
Top 4?
With the new signings, potentially, yeah. They've got no European football to play. So they're potentially playing Saturday to Saturday. There's a lot of time on the grass for Ruben Amorim to work on his players.
We had time, didn't he? Last few months it didn't work out.
With a million games involved.
Sorry?
With a million games
There
involved.
wasn't a million games in the last 3 months,
Well, there was
there?
domestic football. There was
what else?
European football, a European final. Come on, Dan, you know that. To play busy football on Thursdays. Domestic football during the week. 2 or 3 games a week. That's a difficult schedule for a team that wasn't good enough. Now you add good players to it without European football.
You've added 1 player.
Yeah, sitting here now, but it could be 2 with Brian Mbeumo.
Well,
and it
what
could be
does he
3
do?
with Osimhen.
Well, now they're top 4 contenders.
Yes!
I don't
3
understand how
players.
that computes.
So you add 3 brilliant players, you don't think Man U can get top 4?
100% no.
Of course they can.
No!
Why not?
Because they're terrible.
But look at the players that they're signing.
What, are they playing in defence?
No, but...
Are they running around in midfield?
But listen
Are they
to my
wheeling
point.
Casemiro around?
Listen to my point. The manager's going to have time on the training ground. He's not going to have a million games. He's going to be playing Saturday to Saturday.
But if you've
adding
still
really
got the
good
same
players.
personnel, you've got Rashford in the background, you've got Jadon Sancho hanging out
they
behind
might
the
sign
bike
more.
sheds. You know, you've got
They might-
all this problem.
I completely disagree.
I don't understand how all of a sudden
You don't
Cunha
understand
comes,
because you close
like-
your ears off. I've just said to you they're going to sign potentially 3 brilliant
Right,
players.
but if they sign those 3 players, that doesn't fix anything.
It gets them closer to European
But
football.
it doesn't put them across the line with the top 4, does it?
Why not?
Because they've still got to defend. They've still got to win the ball.
Is that all you're basing it on? You're not basing it on structure?
I'm basing
You're
it
not
on they
basing
finished-
goals?
what, they
This
finished
is a team-
16th last
This is a
season.
team that's had a negative goal difference for about the last 4 years. They're trying to fix it.
But they're not.
Well, they are. They're adding
They're
goals
getting
down.
worse. They're getting
Cunha's gonna
worse. Every
score.
season they're
My
getting
God,
worse.
Is he mad? Cunha's going to score, and number 9's
Right.
going to score, and
Right.
Mbeumo's going to score.
Those 3 come in their top 4, Shaq.
I don't see if Manchester United finish the top 4.
Why
I don't.
not?
For all the reasons that Dad just said, between
But
Jadon
the
Sancho
fact-
hanging up behind the
But
bike
the
shed.
fact they've got no European football to play will
Hold
help
on.
them.
We'll get to the predictions, next season predictions later on, right? from a Brian Mbeumo
Shaka's
perspective. No.
Shaka's put an embargo on it.
No, I just told
where's
you.
the
I
cut-off
just told you. I don't think Manchester. As we sit right now, I do not think Manchester United finish top 6. Probably not even
what
top 8.
changes your mind? Osimhen and Mbeumo. Does that change your
About
mind?
6 signings changes my mind. About 6, which we can't speculate on right now. We can't speculate on what those 6 signings are, who they will be. I will say that Manchester United, to your point, don't have the attracting power that they once did. Just because back in the day, Manchester United was the go-to destination. They aren't anymore. They are shopping in the Cunha basket, so to speak, and that level of player. I think that inches them higher up the table, but it doesn't have them banging on the door of top 4. Probably not even top 6, top 8, as I say.
Wow, not even top 8.
Not even top 8.
You're ridiculous.
If I'm Brian Mbeumo, to your question, Dan, my former manager, who got the best out of me, goes to another London club with Champions League football.
Right.
Those 2 clubs, between Spurs and Manchester United, there was, a couple of points and a couple of places between them in terms of the league table. So you're starting pretty much on a level pegging. And so while you make the point about what signings Manchester United could make to propel them to the top 4, you could make that same exact argument about Spurs, because they're starting from pretty much level pegging. And Spurs have Champions League football to attract those players. So you could quite easily make the argument that right now, if we're talking the next 2 or 3 years, which is Brian Mbeumo's focus, Spurs are in a better position. So I take nothing for granted in terms of Mbeumo going to Manchester United. If I'm Brian Mbeumo, and again, coming from somebody who followed Harry Redknapp around, you totally understand if Thomas Frank gives him a call and that all of a sudden is the far more appealing prospect.
That's what you love, isn't it, Rob? In the heat in Miami, listening to us talk nonsense.
Absolutely fantastic. What more could you want?
Where do you? So Don says if they get these 3 players, they're finishing top 4. Where do you
Chance
stand on
of top 4.
Oh, that was a chance. Beep, beep, beep.
Well, I mean, I must say that I agree with Don, because not having European football and having 3 weeks in between games, I mean, the lads in the studio will know better than anyone, but having that time to be able to prepare for 1 game a week is a massive thing for Ruben Amorim and Man United, particularly when you're trying to learn a new system and a new tactical setup. And it's what Ruben Amorim has said even last season. He said that there was a case that maybe Man United weren't ready for European football next year, and maybe it would help them if they had those 3 weeks. So he's assuming that he can get a lot more out of these players. And when you put on top of that, Mateus Cunha and hopefully Brian Mbeumo, 2 proven Premier League goal scorers, you're solving a huge problem there. The lack of goals has really held Man United back for the last couple of years. And if you can solve that and bring in proven Premier League goal scorers to put the ball in there, it gets you an awful lot closer to the top 4. I mean, in my opinion, I think they should be looking at top 6. But I agree with Don. I mean, if they can hit the ground running at the start of next season, start scoring goals, Cunha and Mbeumo scoring goals, I don't see why top 4 should be out of the question.
To that point, while we're talking about Brian Mbeumo here, saying to a player, we don't have Champions League football next season. We don't have any. That's really poor salesmanship.
Well, the fact that they might say we'll give you another 100 grand a week on top.
Well, no. Well, this coming from Manchester United, who've had their financial issues for well-documented financial issues for quite some time. Now it's easy for us sitting on the outside to say it's better for Manchester United that they don't have European football, they don't have those midweek exertions. It's better for Ruben Amorim. For Brian Mbeumo, that doesn't wash. You want to be playing European football.
Do you think Spurs will pay him $250 a week?
I'm sitting here assuming that all things are equal, right?
They're not.
Okay, right. But
you're going to pay him $250 a week.
But to your point, Manchester United have had financial issues for quite some time. If they aren't able to shift Marcus Rashford, if they aren't able to shift Anthony, if they aren't able to shift Casemiro, if they aren't able to shift Jadon Sancho, are we sure that Spurs can't match Manchester United just in terms of financial fair play or whatever it's called now? I'm not sure, given their financial issues. That's just the reality of who Manchester United are right now. This isn't the Manchester United of old.
Thomas Frank then officially confirmed today, by the way, that he is the new Spurs manager. Of course, a number have come before him and failed or succeeded and got sacked anyway. Rob, do you think this will be a success?
I think it's a smart appointment. Again, Thomas Frank is proven in the Premier League. He's taken Brentford out of the Championship, had 4 successful seasons in the Premier League. He's got 2 top 10 finishes on a really small budget compared to the other clubs he's competing against. The only thing that would make me slightly nervous about it is the increased scrutiny and the spotlight on the manager of Tottenham as opposed to the manager of Brentford. A Brentford manager can go 10 games without a win and no one really blinks an eye. If you go 10 games without a win at Tottenham, the pressure starts to mount and the scrutiny's right there. So if he can handle that element of it, and he seems like, having been in the room with him in the past, I think he seems like quite a calm, measured character. I think he probably can handle that pressure. I think it's a really, really smart appointment for Spurs.
Top 4.
Everyone's finishing top 4.
No, I champion him for the Man United job. I like him so much. I think
Why?
He's a connector. I think there's no waffle when you hear him speak. There's no waffle. He tells you how it is. I think he's a connector. He connects fans to the team. I think he makes an environment that is good to play in. He changes his system, whether he's playing home or away. I think he's a very, very smart guy.
Rob will say thank you very much. Of course, Rob will be joining us throughout the Club World Cup. Much appreciated, as well as keeping up to date what's happening with City. He'll also be keeping an eye on those transfers as well, and to keep up to date with all the latest news regarding who's going where and when. Be sure to check out Transfer Talk over on the website.
Well, it's not quite the Miami weather we were expecting here at the Hard Rock Stadium, but tropical climates, a little bit of rain, a little bit of sunshine. But Lizzie's joining me, and we're going to look ahead now to Inter Miami's first game as well. But before we get into their first game of the Club World Cup against Al Ahly, I want to talk about the ticket sales, because that has been probably the biggest problem FIFA has had to face coming into this. We've heard the stories of how they've had to slice it almost by 50%, if not more. But what's been the mood and the vibe like here in Miami?
Yeah, so the ticket sales is an interesting topic. Officially, as last we checked Ticketmaster a couple hours ago, the official tickets were technically sold out. However, there are still various sections empty and available in verified resale. So it'll be interesting to see the game on Saturday and how many fans show up and how many verified ticket sales are not done. We did see that people like those students in Miami-Dade College got tickets for approximately $20 and then received 4 complimentary tickets. So the situation was a little bit of a struggle for FIFA. In terms of the mood of the city, there is angst, there is nervousness. We saw a couple days ago that Customs and Border Patrol and Border Immigration posted a statement saying immigration agents would be in attendance, which sent nervousness across the city, leading a lot of people to question whether they would attend or not. So beyond the sporting aspect, beyond the ticket prices, there's also a large sentiment of fear keeping people away from the stands.
And it's interesting you say that because the last time I was at the stadium was for that very eventful Copa America final that we will not forget anytime soon between Argentina and Colombia. There's still a Leo Messi that's expected to show up and play at this stadium. Have they talked about that any at all in terms of the stadium being able to deal with that capacity of the excited and overly excited football fans?
They have, yes. So FIFA and Hard Rock Stadium confirmed to ESPN that there's going to be several security points and ticket points entering Hard Rock Stadium, as opposed to Copa America, where any fan could enter the perimeter and the premises. This time around, there's going to be a lot of security points that check ticketing, and then you can enter the stadium parking facilities. So even before entering the stadium, you're going to have your tickets checked multiple times.
All right, well, that's good, because either way, I think we're expecting an exciting vibe for that curtain raiser of Inter Miami up against Al Ahly first. Let's talk about their group as well. In terms of the expectations of Inter Miami, what is it? Because I know that you, of course, are very close to the team. Are they expecting to go all the way, get out of the group? Because they do have some heavy hitters in it.
They do. I think the expectations are twofold. Internally, Inter Miami co-owner Jorge Mas, head coach Javier Mascherano have made the target very clear. Inter Miami wants to leave the group stage. They want to qualify for the knockout round. However, when you have an X factor, when you have Lionel Messi on your roster, expectations from fans are a whole different thing. So
final or bust for Messi.
Final or bust, trophy or nothing. But no, internally the team feels a success would be making it to the knockout rounds, considering the level of this tournament, considering the level of the international teams coming into Miami.
Yeah, as we know, if it's not a final for Lionel Messi, it almost feels like it's unfair for the absolute legend. Well, we're looking forward to that game. We're just now 2 days away from the opening of this FIFA Club World Cup.
Shaka here, Sobs. Power ranking.
International power rankings. Argentina are top, runaway CONMEBOL. Portugal, I think, are the better. Spain by penalties. Morocco, Senegal, African representation. Senegal after beating your beloved England. No surprise that they catapult into the top 10. Netherlands had to include Jan's Norway.
Well, no, but you didn't explain the Netherlands very well. You just came in Netherlands.
Yeah, just moving on. I think
They won 8-0.
they'd win it. There you go.
They beat Malta.
I'm just helping my mate.
They're European giants, Malta. I'll have you know. France, Ecuador, who are second in CONMEBOL.
They're on fire, by the way, Ecuador.
Yeah.
Well, didn't they draw 0-0 against Peru?
They've lost one goal in 9.
Didn't they draw, though, like, if we'd taken it
Well,
now?
what I would say to that is, where's Craig Bellamy's Wales? They've been on fire.
They lost against Belgium.
One game.
Where's Cam? They're not.
He's unbeaten apart from that one game against Belgium.
But they lost against...
Well,
if
that's
the
enough. That's enough.
Oh, that's
top
enough,
10,
is it?
you're nothing.
There you are.
I can't have everybody.
Oh, this is hard work. Sid?
There's a lot of data in that.
Yes, Dan.
What would you like to say about Shaka
What do you want
Hessel's top 10?
Basically, Phil for us
Do
for
you
a
know
while.
how a minute ago I said that? Do you know how a minute ago you asked me about the favourites and I said being favourites means nothing? I think being favourites in Shaka's power rankings probably means nothing as well.
Yeah, number one in that. A lot of work. How long did that take you, Shaq?
Like 2 days.
No, in
2 days. I'm literally watching you on the computer. And I was chucking Wales at you. I was chucking Ecuador at you.
You're not supposed to reveal my secrets.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, it punches through quite quick, doesn't it?
Oh, there we go. We'll end the show with some good news. Tomorrow's Don's last day.
Hey! Off to the Club World Cup.
He'll be the only one in attendance of Inter Miami's game. So I'm excited for him to look forward to that. We'll be looking forward to, of course, some more on the Club World Cup. Are you in tomorrow, Shang?
Tomorrow?
Yep.
Nah, I'm off tomorrow.
Well, time will tell. I will be here tomorrow, Don.
Time won't tell. I'm not going to be here tomorrow.
Well, who knows? Maybe
No, I'm not.
we need your top 4 prediction. It's all very important. Be sure to stay tuned. Thank you very much. Welcome into the latest edition of Extra Time. Shaka's here, Don as well, Sid Lowe's here. The only reason Sid Lowe's on the show because we let him talk about Oviedo. Otherwise, absolutely no way would he have been on at this time of night for anything.
Look how happy he is.
I want to ask you a question. As people who now work in television, former pros, obviously there's all this stuff going on around with Pulisic and Tim Howard, suggestions that maybe Pulisic DM Tim Howard to say, look, call it off. If a player did that to you, how much notice would you take?
Ex-player?
No, a current player.
current player.
Say a current player, you know.
Right.
Slid into your DMs and said, I don't like what you're saying about it, or go easy on me. Is that something you would take notice of? Is that something you would engage with? You'd have a conversation, and would you make it public?
Nobody would say go easy on me. Don't want to say.
Well, to answer one question there, I would never make it public.
Right.
Never, ever, 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 ever. But I would listen to someone if he felt as though I'd been a little bit too harsh, because you never know someone's backstory.
Right.
You never know away from the pitch. Someone might be struggling with family matters, or they might lose someone in their family. So you never quite know. And when we judge players on what we see when they're playing the game, which is obviously natural for us because that's what we see, there's always something behind. So if a player contacts you and says you're a bit harsh there, I'm feeling a bit down, or whatever, gone on in my family, of course you'd be sympathetic, 100%, but never in a million years, ever would I make that public.
Jack?
Agreed. Fully with what Don just said.
Sid, what if a player called you out, wasn't happy about things that you'd said about him during a game?
Yeah, I was just thinking exactly that, and I was thinking that really what Don's saying is the way I see it as well. I don't think, honestly, that it makes a difference whether it's as a player who's working on TV or as a journalist who's working on TV. I've had moments when people have called me out for things that I've said. Now, obviously, normally it tends to be someone gets angry with you and they have a go, and then you try and explain your position back rather than that they're trying to explain their position. Very occasionally, you'll get some sort of explanation for either poor form or a moment when a player overstepped the mark or wherever it may be. But the fundamental thing, as Don says, is that part of it is the non-public part. From my point of view, I remember one occasion, and obviously for exactly the reason that Don's saying, that I won't be telling you who it is. A manager phoned me up once, and quite late at night actually, and said that he'd read a piece I wrote about him. And he said, he used this word, faltoso. You know, that's kind of a bit of a lack of respect, isn't it? The way that you framed it, the way that you talked about it. And I actually said to him, I genuinely don't know which piece you're talking about because it wasn't a recent one. And I said, just give me a second. And I went and found it, because obviously it was an online piece. And we basically went through it. And I went through it kind of translating off the cuff what this was in Spanish. And it got to about kind of 2 or 3 parts into the piece. And he said, oh, that's not as bad as I thought it was. But that's good. Because I think, you know, sometimes the nuances of the language or whatever it may be. But to be honest, normally in those scenarios, it's the journalist kind of saying, it's not quite what you think,
right, rather
than the player giving you, if you like, the intimate details or explaining to you the intimate reasons why he feels he's not playing well. It's very, very rare that I think a player would share that with a journalist. Now, with other players, perhaps more likely, because you're more likely to have empathy with them because, of course, you've been through it.
Yes, yeah. Would you slide into someone's DMs as a player who was criticising you if there was somebody?
I don't think so. It's not my thing.
No.
I think there's a different dynamic here in the US, particularly with the American players. I just feel that the US is still, certainly US soccer is still trying to find its space in amongst all the other sports. And there's this kind of camaraderie, certainly between current and ex-players here in the US, that you wouldn't have in England, or I wouldn't have with Trent and Tobago. So I wouldn't. Oh no, I would, but I wouldn't be. That kind of, it's far more friendly, those kinds of exchanges when you play with a smaller country, or in these terms, in US terms, a smaller sport.
Get ready for this. Okay. Have you heard about the Super Ballon d'Or?
Oh,
What?
my days.
Oh, yes.
I hate the real one.
It's only ever been awarded once, and that was to Alfredo Di Stefano. And there's rumours that it could come back once again. This is someone, their legacy of the sport. And that's our first question. Who is your favourite for the Super Ballon d'Or? And when you think who's won it in the past, who would be competing for it, who would it be?
Messi or Ronaldo?
There you go.
I'd give my vote to Lionel Messi.
There we are.
I can't stand it. I can't stand the Ballon d'Or.
Yes, but this is the Super
No,
Ballon d'Or.
I know, but that's even worse because the Ballon d'Or thing just seems to propel on whoever gets to a Champions League final. And as I said, I think on last week's show, if Inter Milan had got to a Champions League, they got to a Champions League final and won it, there's no Inter Milan player that's been better than Rafinha or Yamal or whoever. It's the best player should win it.
So the
Not what
Super
you've
Ballon
won.
d'Or vote would go to for you?
I don't know. I'm not interested. I haven't got a clue.
Sid, you're not allowed to say Cazorla.
Oh, well, I mean, it shouldn't go to anyone then, should it? It really shouldn't. I mean, I think, look, the starting point with this, I mean, I'm fundamentally with Don on this, it's kind of a bit tiresome, and it feels a little bit like, if you're going to do this, is this them just desperately trying to cling to the idea that they can kind of keep the Messi-Ronaldo thing going? Why? It's kind of done now. I think the first thing to say is, what's your criteria? Yeah. Because in part, I think the decision to give it to Alfredo Di Stefano was about recognising that this guy had an absolutely gigantic impact on European football, but because of the primacy of the primacy of Maradona and Pelé, that maybe he didn't always get recognised as being this great figure, and it was a way of recognising that. Now, Ronaldo and Messi have been recognised repeatedly, so I don't really see the point of it. So unless your criteria is to find someone who, for whatever reason, hasn't been talked about, but actually we should all take a step back and go, you know what, he changed everything, I don't see another reason for it. So my answer would be I wouldn't give it to anyone.
Sid,
Best answer.
Is the Club World Cup of any significance?
Honestly, the answer to the question, is it of any significance, is yes, of course it is. Of course it is. I think the broader answer, which is, does this matter a lot? I don't think we really know yet. I think we sort of think it might not, but I think because we all love football, I think once it gets going, I think we may start to feel like this is quite a big deal. Once we start to see the bigger teams play each other, we may start to think, actually, you know what, this matters. Now, it doesn't matter in part because, of course, the competition's importance is about the importance we give it. And that comes through experience. It comes through the history of it. It comes through having watched it before. It comes through remembering that, wow, this is that thing that I watched when I was little, and this is this thing that this team's won lots of times, and it's got all this history bound up in it, and all these storylines bound up in it. And so I think for the time being, it probably will feel like it doesn't. But I must admit, I think as this competition starts to go on, I think we might think that it does.
Nope.
What about Sid's point?
I think it's gathering pace.
Point.
The fact is that we're all going to say no. Like the big Champions League changes, we were like, oh, this is awful. Look at this big table. But by the end, we were actually quite excited. The Nations League, we were like, oh, this.
I think this competition.
Towards the end, it was nice.
I think it will go. I think it will go as pre-season friendlies go. We sit here every summer and discuss Real Madrid, Barcelona in a pre-season friendly. We've had that a couple of times. We've had big clubs face off against each other, and while it's great to witness, and you won't see, 11 changes or whatever sometimes you're allowed to get away with in pre-season friendlies. I don't think it'll take on any more significance
There's big
than that.
money, Shaq. Big pre-season friendlies.
And that's where
a big carrot.
In terms of money, I think that's where it's significant. Where the winners get something like 100 million or whatever it is, and just kind of give them the financial constraints around today's game. That changes a lot for the winner. But just in terms of fans, I think fans look forward to that little summer break as much as anything. And we recognize next summer there's no break, there's a World Cup, that hits differently. Then 2 years later it'll be the Continental Cup, whether it's the Euros or Copa America. These periods are when fans just need a little time, and I think this will be
I honestly think it's
Exactly
gathering
that.
pace.
That made me laugh. Why on earth do you think that?
Because
you're working on it.
No, well, I am, but my intrigue comes from I've never seen Inter Miami play Man City.
But how's that gathering pace?
Because it's very intriguing to see.
But how has it built momentum?
Does he ever want to let me finish this, fella?
I don't know.
But how's it built momentum? You're gathering pace because you can feel that people are getting more excited about it.
Well, I am.
Yes, but you're a single
Gab
person.
You and Gab. Me and Gab.
Right,
Does it not intrigue you to see how the European sides, with their fitness and their running power and their intensity, get on against like a Brazilian side who are very technical, or an Inter Miami side with Messi and Busquets and Suarez, how they would deal with, say, a young Chelsea team? Does it not intrigue you the completely different styles of football that you're going to see?
Nope.
It does to me.
You see that? We saw that in the previous versions of the Club World Cup, albeit with 4 teams or whatever it was.
But you've never seen Al Hilal play a Man City or Inter Miami play a Chelsea.
For good reason.
But why? Are you not interested?
They played each other in previous versions of the Club World Cup when it was 6 teams and the Europeans and South Americans or whoever it was joined in late. You had Asian teams playing against South American teams or whatever it is. Nobody watched. They played, and I didn't watch. And I won't be watching this time either.
I think it's gathering pace. I'm actually really looking forward to it.
Of course
Genuinely.
you want to get paid.
No, I'm not. Forget the getting paid thing. If I wasn't working on it, I promise you, if I was not working on it, I would watch this at home. No, I would. 100% I would.
Sid, how long did it take you? Oh, sorry. I'll ask you this, Sid. Is the US men's national team drama overhyped? I'm getting legit angry.
You're asking me if the US men's national team drama is
it not dominating marker?
I was on front pages.
Is it?
No, dear.
No, it's not. It's not.
Wow.
I'll be honest. I've not been all over this one.
Wow,
I'm sorry.
Sid. Don, you have obviously. Have you been here?
I find it very weird. I think it's like an absolute soap opera. It's fascinating. It's terrible.
It's gathered pace, really, hasn't it? Over the
gathering
last few
pace
days?
every single day. But it's from the outside looking in. It's a terrible watch. Like, it's awful to see the bit. Yes, very weird. Very it's a TV show.
Yeah, very public.
Yeah.
Sid, how long did it take you to learn Spanish? For someone who made a tough decision in March to move from Liverpool to Madrid, Trent's Duolingo score must be off the charts with how fluent he is.
Well, you know what? This was exactly I think the response from the UK, at least from England, and of course in particular from Liverpool fans today when they heard Trent deliver that little speech and do it in Spanish, and Spanish that sounded really very good as well. And of course that was the sort of the response. It was like, hang on, this sounds a bit too good. This is suspicious. You know, Trent, who says he only made his decision recently, suddenly speaks this fluent Spanish. Now I think it's worth taking a slight step back. This genuinely did impress. It genuinely did have a moment when people went, whoa, hang on, did he just do that? And not many people do it. But I think, you know, we're talking about a pre-learned speech.
Right.
We're talking about a speech that's very, very well delivered, without cue cards, with calmness and so on. But that's not the same as going into a press conference and speaking fluently. So he does this in the presentation part. He then goes to the press conference and he does it all in English. So I think we need to be careful about assuming this means his Spanish is already great and therefore making the leap of faith in terms of how long ago it was he was learning Spanish. The other thing is, by the way, if he's learning a language, good on him. Whether he's learning it to come to Real Madrid or not. And Trent was very, very... it was very noticeable, by the way, that Trent tried to avoid, I think, the implicit accusation that his Spanish was suspiciously good. The very first question asked of him from a journalist from the UK was, hey, well done on that Spanish, by the way. How long have you been learning it? And he said, a few months. And there was a smile, which was the smile of a man who knows that's a loaded question. That's one that's coming for me. And then a little bit later, in his very first answer to a Spanish journalist, he said, you know, this is a great day, one I've been looking forward to for a very long time. Mm-hmm. The second question was then, you know, you say this is a day you've been looking forward to for a very long time, you know, classic Spanish question, by the way, were you a Real Madrid fan as you grew up? And Trent, I think, even as early as that, realised that, hang on, this is something that could bite me. He said, when I say a very long time, I mean for a couple of weeks. I mean, you know, looking forward to the presentation, rather than that I've spent my life wanting to go to Real Madrid, and I've been planning this for ages. Yeah. Anyway, to your original question, the first time I went to Spain, I spoke literally no Spanish, but I was in with a family in a little town called Lorca in Murcia for 2 weeks, and totally surrounded, totally immersed, and by the end of it, I could speak a bit.
not loads, but a bit, but that created the enthusiasm. And so I suppose it depends, what do you count as speaking Spanish? And it depends on your environment. It depends. And another one, I'll give you another example. When I lived in Oviedo as a student, and my Spanish improved enormously, absolutely enormously, when I broke my leg. And I was in hospital for 5 weeks. And genuinely, obviously, physically it was a disaster. Linguistically, it was brilliant, because when you're in a position of absolute obligation, when you have literally no choice, you improve really rapidly. Because you have to. As you discovered, Dan, when you learn very quickly about mushrooms.
Exactly. Champiñones, everyone. Everyone is there. Shaka, you were learning Spanish. How'd that go?
Not as well as Trent, apparently. I on the old Duolingo.
Yes.
Didn't go swimmingly.
What, have you just given up?
Oh, yeah. After about 6 months, all I could say is, hola, ¿cómo estás?
Don, how's your linguistic skills?
No.
Nothing?
I'll deflect that straight
just
to
speaks
you.
English loud.
I'll deflect that straight onto you and say, how did it not work for you, Dan?
There we go. For Don, seeing that Napoli have completed the signing of Kevin De Bruyne, what would be the percentage chance for Napoli to retain their title?
I'd probably say 50-50 with Inter.
You say 50-50 for everything now.
Well, Milan are miles off it.
Right. Juventus?
Juve are miles off it. Atalanta done a fantastic job in the Gasparini, but they've got a new manager, so it'll be 50-50 genuinely.
What percentage are Manchester United top four?
Right, I'm putting context on this, because do you remember I said Arsenal wouldn't get in the top four about 4 years? No, it wasn't that long. About 3 years ago.
You had to buy me dinner because you did it wrong.
The context on that was 2 weeks later they spent £100 million on Declan Rice.
Right.
So before the question.
Yes.
Then they spent it on Havertz and they went out and blew all their money and got done really well.
Yes.
So I'm saying this with the caveat of if they signed Cunha.
Well, then Cunha signed, that's done.
Yeah. And Buemo.
Right.
And Osimhen or Gyökeres.
Right.
Percentage chance of getting top four, I would say 25%.
Oh my God. Is that it?
Well, they're competing against some top sides.
But you said during the show they're going to get top four.
No. This is what you do. I said could get top four.
You were quite adamant about it.
No, because I was adamant. I was adamant.
Hand up against Shaka at one stage.
Because I was trying to explain to you that when they've got no European football this year, that makes a massive difference.
They're still massive underdogs not to get the top four.
I know, but what I'm trying to say is...
So why are you persuading us that they're going to get in the top
because
four?
they've had a negative goal difference for years and years and years. That's going to improve drastically on the
during the show you said top four and they shouted at me a lot.
I did, because they could get top four.
But you said they've only got a 25% chance. That's terrible.
Because I don't know if they're going to sign Osimhen and Gyökeres.
You said if they did sign, they'd be a 25%.
I think they've got a right chance.
You said 25% if they sign.
I think they've got a right chance.
25% isn't a right chance. That's 1 in 4. That's a terrible odd.
Is it?
Of course it is.
Well, I can't just say, it's 100% they're going to get top four.
You were talking like that during
because
the show.
they have got a brilliant chance, because you're underplaying them.
Brilliant chance isn't 25%.
You're underplaying the fact what I'm saying. There's got no European football.
You're underplaying it by just saying they've got 1 in 4 chance of qualifying.
They've got one game a week.
Right, but still they're only 25%.
I think so, yes.
Right. Shaka, can a keeper's height be a hindrance? I look at David Raya and think he's too short to be a keeper. Well, obviously not Dan short. That's not nice.
We had this conversation yesterday, didn't we?
This just feels like a question just designed to call your height.
Well, that's disappointing.
We had this conversation yesterday about Newcastle signing James Trafford from Burnley. And I said to Shaka, when I watch James Trafford, brilliant when the ball's at his feet, he doesn't fill a goal. Like, on the face of it, he looks quite small. And you were on the same lines.
To your question, I think in today's game, it benefits to have a bigger goalkeeper. Listen,
right. Why today as opposed to yesterday?
I just feel in today's game as opposed to yesterday's game, outfield players are a lot bigger as well. You just look at a majority of the teams now, and physically they just seem so much bigger. So, but to the question, David Raya has been outstanding. I don't think his height or lack of it has been a hindrance to Arsenal in any way. One of the best goalkeepers I ever worked with, Shea Given, was on the smaller side for goalkeepers at the time. That was never an issue for him either. He was simply outstanding. So,
and the game's changing. They're not coming for a lot of crosses, are they?
But you look at the best goalkeepers in the world today. Courtois is enormous.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
Donnarumma, enormous. So there seems to be a benefit to being.
How tall was Peter Shilton's then?
How tall was Peter Shilton? Pretty small, and it showed.
Yeah, it did.
Diego Maradona jumped. I know everyone says
Exactly.
Maradona put his hand up, but it was only on his head.
Yes, I know. There's some interesting comments on the internet about that, but I can't mention those. Sid, should Frankie de Jong be considered one of the best in his position? His form has been ridiculous in 2025. His form. His form has been ridiculous in 2025 for club and country.
His firm, yeah.
It said firm. I only read what's on the bit of paper. Don't start.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say, that might be right. It might be nothing about the way he's performed on the pitch. He might have a business that's performing particularly well, and his firm has been doing really well.
Thomas Gravison style.
2025. I just wanted to go back to the previous question, by the way. Don's talking about signings. If ever there was a good signing, it's from Bueno. There you go.
Oh, goodness me. Why is that? Why has he said that?
Don't know.
Spanish.
Oh, dear.
My 6 months of Duolingo was not in vain.
Don's sulking. Why are you sulking? What's wrong?
I'm not sulking.
A bit sulky in the club.
I'm not going to sulk because I'm having an argument with you. I win it every time. I win the argument every time.
What about those 2 bets that we had that I won? Dan and Shaka, rank these 3 Stevie moments.
Oh, boy.
Wow, this is interesting. There's so many more.
Yes.
Slippers at the school lunch. Said he accidentally wore his slippers to his granddaughter's school lunch.
Wow.
He forgot to put his
I
trainers
didn't realise he left home with his slippers on, as Stevie does.
Expired passport going to the UK.
I don't think that matters, does it? That's fine.
That's
Sell him as he's comfortable.
Passport for footballers is standard.
Getting lost, walking the dog, and he had to call Craig.
It's a 50-50, isn't it?
Oh, it's got to be when he got lost.
Walking the dog. Yeah, walking the dog is easily funniest.
And the high vis obviously just makes it even better.
Easily.
Oh, there's some other
Walking
stories
that
as
bear,
well.
man. That's a bear he's walking.
What a man.
I know. Haggis is mad. Haggis weighs more than I do.
Yeah, well.
I think Haggis is like 160 pounds.
That's not hard, Dan.
How heavy is Peter Shilton? Okay. Don, have you figured out US geography to plan out all the travel from the Club World Cup coverage? So Don is travelling to the different stadiums.
Oh, yeah?
I'm going to Orlando,
Right.
Cincinnati.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. Half to
Anyone
Orlando.
wants to stalk Don, they can do it
There you
here.
go. So Orlando for the first game.
Yes. And how do you feel about all of this?
Atlanta, Cincinnati, Miami. I'm in Miami actually for 2 games back to back, so that's not as bad.
Right. You're going to see Kieran.
Listen, when it comes to this sort of thing, I need help.
Right. Okay.
Because I need someone to do the logistics for me. See, I'm the type of guy, right? Point me in the right direction.
But you
tell me what time.
all you got to do is go to an airport.
Yeah, I know, but it's all the logistics.
Only Cincinnati's a little bit kind of out, but otherwise you're just right there on the East Coast.
I'm the type of guy, right? You point me in the right direction.
There's the airport.
Tell me
It's not difficult.
What time I need to be there, what game I'm covering, where. That's all I need. Book things for me.
You ever notice how Dan is always arguing with you?
Because he loves it.
Oh, sorry.
Sid, when are you coming over?
When it gathers pace.
For the start of the knockout phase.
See? It's right when it starts to gather pace.
That's what they send Don home. Oh, God.
Ah, boy.
Didn't you travel cross country with Claire? Didn't you do a proper American trip, Sid? You can give Don some tips.
I'm all right.
He's not going anywhere. He's right there.
In a massive. What do you call it in the US? Like a camper van? What's the American word for a camper van? Absolutely huge thing it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, an RV. Yeah, it was terrifyingly big. I drove it for 10 minutes. I was told to pull over and sit in the passenger seat instead.
See, that would scare me if I had to drive to these places.
Right.
Yeah.
That'd be a test.
Yes, it would be. How you become the percentage guy? That was on my mind.
I think I was at home and I just got on an absolute whirlwind in a washing machine and panicked big time over the percentage.
The percentages were like 70, 40.
And you know what it was like? I've gone like thinking I was clever.
Right.
26%. And then he's gone, what's about the second team? And I've gone 34. My brain now can't add it all up to 100.
Oh, dear me. You don't get this at the Club World Cup.
See, I'll be respected there.
You will be respected.
What's the percentage chance that Don gets lost?
Final question, Sid. Will you do a follow-up to your book, Fear and Loathing in La Liga?
Oh.
More than a follow-up, it probably needs an update. But to be honest, it was such a No, I don't fancy it very much, to be perfectly honest with you.
Oh, man.
Do you make any money from those?
Right, well, generally speaking, out of books, you really don't make very much money. This has been a slow burner, and very, very, very small royalties checks come in once a year, but they're not very big.
What's the biggest one you've had, Sid?
Oh, there you are.
Sorry?
What's the biggest check you've had?
The biggest one?
Yeah.
Well, you see, the biggest ones... Oh, the biggest check? Well, I don't know. This year's was, I think, $150 or something.
Yes!
So, it's fair to say. It's
not
going to say very much anymore.
Thank you very much, Sid. Thank you very much, Shaka. Don, last day. Enjoy your game for pizza in New Haven tonight, aren't you?
Yeah.
Very nice.
Very
Coming?
No, I'm busy.
No. Oh, you're busy, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Second chance you're coming.
Oh, we had a nice dinner last night,
Yeah,
though.
we had a great
Very
dinner
nice dinner. There we are.
I've been hearing all about it.
Yes. Anyway, ESPN FC returns tomorrow. Myself and Don will be here as we'll be counting down to a competition that we hear is gathering pace. It's the Club World Cup, ladies and gentlemen. It's on Saturday.